this week on Hip Hop Now podcast with the release of Kendrick Lamar's fourth project, yes, I said fourth, entitled Damn. Are we looking at the greatest consecutive album release of all time?
But let's get right to business.
Read these headlines.
This album must be gone.
This album must be gone.
Classic albums are. Classic albums are.
Come to Hip Hop Podcast.
What up, y'all? I am your host, Vegas, and this is Hip Hop Now Podcast Extra, a podcast designed to catch you up on all things hip-hop music and culture that happened throughout the week, right here on Death Star Radio. DSR.FM is the dial, available on your iOS and Android device. And let me go a little bit off topic. Speaking of Android device, I was one of those people who was a Samsung Note user, right? I had the 3, I had the 4, skipped the 5, but basically it never blew up on me. The 7 was the dream phone. Sleekness, style, professionalism, openness as far as, I'm a heavy user. I do a whole bunch of things on my phone, a lot of work. But, I was a heavy user, and then to have this whole, the recall situation with the phones catching on fires. Now, for the record, mine's never got warm, but I wasn't playing around with something like that. Don't want my house, my car, my pocket to burn up or whatever. But I never really lost too much faith in Samsung as a company. I was just frustrated that was a pretty dope phone. Well, I got the shiny newness right now, the Samsung Galaxy SA Plus. I know this sounds like a commercial, but I'm just going to tell you, I'm a tech dude also, just as much as a hip-hop dude. And when I tell you this makes up for the Note 7, it absolutely does. It really does. But let's get it right to the business. You know what I'm saying? You can follow me on social media at Vegas World INC. Please know, when you do that, right? Instagram, Twitter, and Snapchat is Vegas World INC. But if you are looking for me on Facebook, it's not that. That's my hip hop page. That's my rapping page. Unless you want to check it out. If you're looking for the podcast page for Facebook, it's facebook.com/hip hop right now. Facebook.com/hip hop right now. You will not only get updates to this podcast, but I also share a lot of hip-hop stories and songs and videos I come across. I don't talk too much because that's what the podcast is for, but I also share videos from my new channel on YouTube. It's called the B-Roll Network, letter B, ROLE Network. It's not just hip-hop, even though I have a playlist of the things I do, but there's also other elements there, including sports, video games, and there's so much more to come, so many other people who are going to contribute. So B-Roll Network, not ROLL like butter roll, no, like role model, BROLE Network. Check it out. Now, let's get right to the business at hand. As you already know, Kendrick Lamar dropped what some consider his fourth album, but if you just came in on Good Kid, Mad City, I won't say anything bad about you. Yes, his third album in a row, whatever. But most hip hop fans look at it as fourth, right? That being Section 80 as number 1, Good Kid, Mad City is number 2, To Pimp a Butterfly as the third album, and this latest album entitled Damn as the fourth album. Now, the word on the street for most people, for most critics, is that it's either good, solid, or extraordinary, right? Which is a pretty good place to be in. I don't hear too many people who say it's whack. All of it is subjective, given the fact that, we all have different personal tastes, period. So there are going to be some people where it's not going to move them at all. For one reason or another, and that's fine. And that's what brings me to the question of this episode. And if you don't know, just to let you know, if you're a new listener, I appreciate you. Subscribers and listeners that listen all the time, I appreciate you even more. But the thing is, the word on the street is, I'm getting ahead of myself. All right. For extra podcast, when I say it's a Hip Hop Now podcast extra, that means I'm going to focus in on one topic. There's a number of stories that happen, but I feel like this discussion warrants some attention. And that discussion being, is Kendrick the greatest rapper of all time? One of the? Can we say this early, right? Those are the different questions. But my question for this particular podcast is not whether he's the greatest MC of all time or will he be. Time will tell, right? But what cannot be denied at this given point for those that do like the album and fall in that category of either good, extraordinary, or even, dare I say, some people have been saying classic. Well, I probably wouldn't go that far yet. I'll just say it takes time for us to rate him as an MC. His career is where it is right now. But rating him based off of his 4 projects, not any mixtapes with freestyles, even though Overly Dedicated is a classic mixtape in my opinion, but rating him solely off of his 4 major releases, right? The 4 I named earlier. And I got to thinking about that, right? I'm not one of those who are going to say Kendrick Lamar is already the greatest of all time or one of the greatest of all time. But he's moving up my list with every project. And that's what it's about for me right now. It's about the projects. Now, let me just say a disclaimer. This is my opinion. This is how I feel about Kendrick Lamar, his music, his artistry, right? Some people may feel different, and that is fine. Leave your comments in the comments section. But this is how I'm going to analyze his run thus far. But more importantly, comparing his run to other greats in hip hop. That's how I compare him to the greats. I'm not going to compare him based off of lyrical skill, impact, whether this bar is more memorable than this bar. That's not what the discussion to me is about Kendrick Lamar, because the discussion is really about the albums and how they're being executed. So I had to think, right? Who in hip hop that's considered legends or greats, have hits, whatever, who in hip hop history, not right now, we know how he's doing right now, he's slaughtering his peers. Let's just get that out the way. He's slaughtering his peers. But let's rate him against hip-hop history. Who has had 4 solid to great albums in a row, consecutively? Not just 4 albums that you can pick out of a catalog, because there are a couple of people who can do that, because there are some people who have longevity. But I'm talking about back to back to back to back, right? Other disclaimer. It's easy to say, if you're a fan of somebody, that, well, yeah, he's had 4 albums. He's had 10 straight in a row. You know, if you're talking about somebody like Jay-Z or Too Short or somebody like that, right? But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about first listen, second listen, you like it even more, third listen. Then you start to feel like maybe it's a problem that you're listening to this music so much. I'm talking about that kind of vibe with it. Like, you already know that you're going to listen to this album a number of times before you finish it. So I'm not just talking about an album that was good. I'm also not talking about an album that you can skip 4 songs on. Let's just say 4, because it's a nice round number. Or maybe not, but whatever. Let's just say 4. If there are 4 songs on that album that you skip or that you kind of don't like or you could do without, then those albums are disqualified. Let's start going through some of the people who are already eliminated because they may not have 4 albums in a row that were that good. Nas, gone. Illmatic, of course, the timeless classic, just celebrated 23 years strong of being arguably the greatest hip hop album of all time. It was written. I thought that was a very good album. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't Illmatic, but I liked the progression. Sure, there were some songs that could have come off, but they weren't songs that were skippable to me. I think the only song I would skip on It Was Written was Nas Is Coming. I kind of didn't like that song. I don't know. Maybe it was the beat by Dre. And then he had I Am and then Nostradamus. So no, Nas is out. Jay-Z. Let's talk about Jay-Z. Reasonable Doubt. Absolutely a classic. But then, and look, we eliminating Jay-Z already, but then his second album, not Hard Knock Life, In My Lifetime, right? Volume 1. Wasn't really as good. Well, put it this way, it wasn't as bad as some people make it out to be, because there was a point where they were saying it was his worst album, and I totally do not agree. But there are a number of skippable records on there, especially today. There's some records that do not hold up today. And we could hop around with Jay-Z, because he has enough albums. We could hop around with Nas. There is no point where they had 4 consecutive albums that were crazy. My opinion, though, it's my opinion. Some people may feel like with Nas, once he did Stillmatic, he's been putting out heat ever since. I don't agree. I feel like Stillmatic was really dope. I felt like Godson was really dope, but it had some skippables. And the double album, Streets Disciple, should have been a solo album, because there was definitely some memorable tracks on there. And there was also some that I honestly forget. So, not that eliminates Nas and eliminates Jay-Z. You could say, okay, but when Hard Knock Life came out, which some people don't like, but I liked it a lot when it came out, Jay-Z had a nice streak from there all the way to the Blueprint. I disagree. Because to me, Jay-Z had a lot of hits. He was all over the radio. But as far as albums being something that you could literally say, I can listen to this straight through, and sometimes I could even listen to the track that maybe I skip from time to time. Illmatic is that. The song I skip on Illmatic is One Time for Your Mind, right? But there are times when I'm listening where I just let it rock. That's a classic album. Let's move on. Big is eliminated. Why? Of course, the obvious, he passed away, right? He had 2 dope albums, in my opinion, and everything else was curated by other people, and they honestly do not count because he wasn't here to submit an album. You know what I'm saying? When an artist submits an album, this is what they feel is good to go to them. Who else? Tupac. Now, Tupac comes very close. Again, he's eliminated at a certain point because also he passes away, and I don't count anything really after Machiavelli as a project that Tupac put together himself to put out and was satisfied with. But I'll say this. I didn't really care for Tupacalypse. I like maybe 2 or 3 records off of there. I wasn't that much of a fan of Strictly for My Niggas for the same reason. I like I Get Around. I like records here and there, but not enough to feel like the album as a whole was a solid album that I could go back to. But Me Against the World, All Eyes on Me, Machiavelli, that's a strong 3 albums, and that is definitely a career that's going up. Because, see, that's the thing with Kendrick's 4 albums. Well, actually, let me take that back. With Kendrick's 4 albums, it's not even a progression of going up. It's going up because of the consistency. Because I think he raised his level with To Pimp a Butterfly. But yeah, more than anything is that. Rakim, Eric B. and Rakim. Total opposite is actually Descends. Paid in Full, undeniable classic. Let the Rhythm hit him. A lot of dope records, but definitely some skippables. And then it goes downhill. Not saying that everything Rakim put out was whack after those first two albums, but I'm just saying that the albums don't hold up as far as inconsistency of dopeness. It just doesn't. Slick Rick. Slick Rick has one album that is a undeniable classic, and that's his first album, The Great Adventures of Slick Rick. And after that, it is all downhill. And Slick Rick is a legend in the game. One of my favorite rappers of all time, one of the dudes who inspired me in a number of ways, from MCing to content to just personality, Ice Cube. Ice Cube right out the gate, America's Most Wanted, classic. Death Certificate, in my opinion, even better classic. Then came, what was after that? The Predator? Yeah, I think he put out The Predator. And I feel like that was kind of, not, he was losing some steam. Now, I don't count Kill It Will, because Kill It Will was an EP, plus it felt like more of a, I don't know, kind of a leftovers from America's Most Wanted. You know what I'm saying? It didn't feel like, it felt like Ice Cube did what Nas did with the Lost Tapes just back then. It just had other songs that maybe they felt were dope, but just didn't fit within the context of the album. But Ice Cube then had Lethal Injection after The Predator, and it was kind of just all downhill. So Ice Cube eliminated. Who else? Common is a debatable one, because honestly, and this is my opinion, speaking as a fan, but a fan based off of my times, and this is also another thing I probably should have put in the beginning, but I think it works that I'm putting these disclaimers out all in the middle of the podcast. The other disclaimer is, if you don't know me, my time is the 90s, right? I consider that, a time I grew up, became a teenager, went to college, and eventually graduated college, right? 1990 to 2000, right? Your coming of age, whatever was your coming of age years, that's your time. You know what I'm saying? That's the time where you were probably most influenced by hip hop. It probably made its impression on you the most around that time. Now, obviously, I didn't stop listening to hip hop after 1999. I still listen to it, and I still love newer artists who are dope, like Kendrick Lamar, just as much as I love others, right? So there's no bias from me. I'm naming a lot of my heroes, and they are being eliminated, and it sucks. But it's all for a good thing, right? Hip hop. But yeah, Common is debatable because didn't really feel the first two albums, and I know Resurrection is in there. I don't care how you feel about it, old heads. I just wasn't that much into him. Yes, I used to love her and all some of the records that are the standout records, of course, but I didn't like it as a whole. I really started to enjoy Common's albums once he came out with One Day It Will All Make Sense. The album with him as a kid and his mother is right next to him on the cover. I felt like that's when Common came into his own as an MC, and he started to rhyme a little bit more on beat instead of just the spoken word over beats. But he had a nice run, right? He had One Day It Would All Make Sense. Then he had Like Water for Chocolate. That's two. But then he had Electric Circus, which I was not feeling. And honestly, I'm going to be honest, if you listen to that record today, now it works. And that just goes to show you it's all about timing. So I don't look at him having 4 consecutive albums when that one kind of, I don't know, it kind of messed up the rotation at that time. It was just released at a time where people weren't ready for it based off of his previous 2 releases. But let's skip over because Common got enough albums, right? So let's go to B. That was a solid album. Then he put out Fonding Forever, which is an album I kind of like a little bit better than B. Then he put out the Dreamer, the Believer, or whatever it was called. That one was pretty dope. A lot of people was calling that a classic, right? I believe that was next. Then he put out that Universal Mind Control album, which was Common, and he said this, and I quote, saying, "When I go to clubs, people show me love, but my records never come on in the club. So I wanted to make dance music or club music that DJs could play in the club because I never did that." Well, nobody plays anything from that album, as far as I know, in a club or in their house. So Common is eliminated because he just didn't have 4 consecutive albums like that, right? Scarface. Let's talk about Scarface real quick. Mr. Scarface, classic. I can listen to that to this day. I love that album. It is pure gangster rap. It is dirty. It is filthy. Young heads, don't let anyone, and trust me, I'm not just a millennial fan or want to be young or whatever. I really don't. I like having money. But I just want to speak to the younger cats. Yo, don't let anyone tell you that your era of MCs, whether they be good or bad, their lyrics are too harsh. You go back and listen to Scarface's debut album, Mr. Scarface, and those are some of the dirtiest records of all time. And I loved every bit of it as a teenager growing up. But Mr. Scarface is Back was a dope debut album. But then that second album wasn't that great. The third one, I think, was called The Diary. That one was kind of good. And Scarface is spotty with the projects. One minute he puts out something that's really dope. The next minute it's okay. You know what I'm saying? So I think that kind of eliminates Scarface. Again, it's my opinion. Let's talk about groups. Why not? Why not put Kendrick up against the groups? Let's name a couple. Mobb Deep. Mobb Deep comes really close. You got The Infamous. You have Hell on Earth, which, if you ask me, I do have a couple skippable tracks on there, so I think that kind of eliminates them. But for argument's sake, let's say Hell on Earth. Then you have what's after Hell on Earth? Murder Music. Those are 3 really good albums, but Murder Music was the peak, because then you had Infamy, which was the decline of Prodigy as an MC. I mean, I think that was just like the end of him, to be honest. Gangstar. Let's look at Gangstar. You know what I'm saying? First album just eliminates them anyway, because they weren't the Gangstar that we've come to know to this day. So let's start with Daily Operation. No, not Daily Operation. Step in the Arena. That was pretty dope, but I think I still have a lot of skippables on there. A couple of classics on there. Then they had Daily Operation, solid. Hard to Earn, solid. I think after Hard to Earn, it was a couple of years before they had Moment of Truth, which was also solid. It's one of their classics. And then what's the last one? I can't remember the last one that had the locks on it and all that, but that was great. Ghostface. Ghostface had a nice run, you know what I'm saying? Iron Man, Supreme Clientele, Don't Sleep, Bulletproof Wallets was really dope too. And Fish Scale. Ghostface might be right there, but too many of those are debatable to some people. So, no. Wu-Tang completely eliminated, because Into the 36 Chambers was dope. I liked the second album, Wu-Tang Forever. Iron Flag was pretty solid also, but then it was all downhill from there as well. So let's just talk real quick and let's just try to get it in, because there's probably one group that's close to matching Kendrick in that regard, and that's Outkast. Not A Tribe Called Quest, nope, but Outkast. And maybe EPMD. Think about it. Outkast has had A nice run, even if you don't count their first album. You're talking about A.T. Aliens. Then what was next? Stankonia, I believe, was next. Oh, no, Quimini. Then Stankonia. Then after Stankonia, I guess it was Love Below. I forget the double CD joint. And I really like that too. But those are 4 solid albums, though. Same thing with EPMD. Strictly Business, Unfinished Business, Business as Usual. Then what's the other one? Business Never Personal. And then they broke up. But that's 4 solid albums. Now, I said all of that to say this, y'all, because we got to wrap this up. I named a lot of hip-hop, a lot of legends. You know, I didn't name KRS-One, but I feel the same way with him. There's 2 or 3 classics, and then there's some, you skip over a couple albums. I feel like Kendrick is laying the groundwork for a legendary career where he can one day be considered the best. I think at this point, given his projects, the number one thing people love about his projects is none of them sound the same. None of them. None of them have the same concept. None of them necessarily have the same content. He's shown you different flows. He's shown you different beats. He's collaborated with different people. Not only does he give you the boom bap, but he gives you working with a jazz artist, working with U2. He gives you singles. He gives you ride to music. He gives you head nod music. He gives you all of this in a package with a concept that harkens back to times where you had to pay attention to lyrics and titles of songs and album covers and then try to connect all the dots. And then after your brain is blown from thinking about the fact that a dude could come up with this and execute it, then you go and look to see who played a role in it. And you see all these different artists and musicians from different areas. And what I like that a lot about To Pimp a Butterfly, but you could hear it. You know, you could hear that a lot of jazz musicians were involved. This album, you can't tell. You can't tell Mike Will Made It is on here. And even though I could tell that was Alchemist's record, but you can't tell whose signature is on what. It is a true collaboration, a true coming together of talent and great minds. And Kendrick makes it happen every time. Every time. It's to the point where I will buy his music without even having to know about anything, like I did with this, because he does not disappoint. Of course, it's my opinion, but he just doesn't disappoint when he drops these albums. You know what I'm saying? And I'm talking about conceptually. Think about the album or his body of work as concepts. Think about the execution of those concepts. Don't just think about bar for bar, because not everything is going to be bar for bar. You know, like I know, Kendrick can go there. He's shown it on a number of occasions that he can go there bar for bar. But I think when we compare him and his catalog to others, we are comparing him to their accomplishments, which are accomplished in different ways. DMX was very successful, but nobody would ever say he's better than certain artists. You know what I'm saying? So what I say to you is listen to your music just a little deeper. That's all. And then you'll find what it is that everybody is anointing Kendrick about. Still not the greatest of all time, but he's getting close. He's getting close. One more album like this, and I'll start talking my ish. That's going to do it for me for this week. You can follow me on social media at Vegas World INC, and check me out right here on Death Star Radio, DSR.FM, which is available on your iOS or Android device. Please know that you can subscribe to this podcast on SoundCloud.com, iOS Podcast, Google Play Music, TuneIn, Stitcher Radio, Podbean, and all things considered. Until next week, y'all, I am not a critic. I'm a fan. Peace. Dropping on the random.